Yeah.
There we go.
All right, false start. Uh, Welcome to the High Vibe Tribe. This is episode number 2. And I got my buddy Brad Olsen here. And he probably doesn't need any introduction in the esoteric world as he's written these awesome books, The Whitman Sampler for Everything Esoteric, in 3 volumes, with Beyond Esoteric being his latest from 2021, was it?
Well, no, a second edition just came out this year.
Oh,
You
okay.
don't have yet. Yeah.
Um, what is the difference in the
Well,
second
I
edition?
I did a redesign. I updated all the information as you do in a second edition. I put in some new images and captions, but a brand new chapter called Plandemic. And I think you can understand what that's about.
I think I can let my imagination run wild with that one.
Yeah. Plandemic, scandemic.
Yep,
It was
exactly.
all
So,
per But that's an esoteric subject because it went to the mass audience who participated in that thing. And as a result, those few of us who did not accept that jabberdew, we are what is the definition of esoteric, and that is information known to a select few. And the information that we had was don't do it. And so the chapter in Future Esoteric second edition called Plandemic goes through the whole scenario of how it was all pre-planned long before this whole thing was rolled out. But it also goes back in that chapter, I talk about the Spanish flu. And that was actually introduced through the soldiers in World War One. It came out of Fort Riley, Kansas, where they were doing the experimental jabberdews on the doughboys going overseas to fight in World War One. And it was they who were the ones who did the super spreading.
wow, that's a whole can of worms that I'm ready to tackle when that book comes out. But
It is
today,
out.
today we wanted to keep it a little simpler, just
Yeah.
to do something that is our favorite subject. Just kidding, of course. Wanted to talk about the flat Earth.
Hmm.
Uh, how in the world did we get here, Brad?
Well, let's just remind your audience that nobody ever talked about the flat earth or saw any of those slick videos 15 years ago. It was never in the conspiracy field. And I've been in book publishing and very interested in anything conspiracy related for over 30 years. And all of a sudden, kind of around 2010, you start seeing these people saying, oh, we're in a flat earth, there's a big dome over us. Or they'll use biblical terms like the firmament, which is the term for the sky with little holes poked in it. Those are the stars that were seen by people in biblical times of the Old Testament when they called the sky the firmament, especially at night. And so then these biblical terms kept popping into it. Of course, right straight from the beginning, I was very dubious with the whole notion that we were living in a flat Earth. And then, of course, 7 years ago, I go down to Antarctica on a sailboat. And when I got there, I saw huge icebergs. I saw ice shelves, which are commonly mistaken by flat earthers as an earth wall. But an earth wall would go down through the water to the ground, right? It's a wall, not a shelf where you can go underneath. In fact, we met scuba divers that swam underneath the ice shelf. And there are a dozen or so ice shelves in Antarctica, and they're huge. I mean, you're looking at a 30-story tall wall of ice. And that's the photos you see in a lot of people who say, "Oh, this is a flat Earth." See, you can get but in the Arctic, you can go up there. That's still a frozen ice shelf as well. But when you go to Antarctica, the continent doesn't even exist. In the schematics of a flat earther, there is no such thing as Antarctica. And I say, well, I got pictures right here on my phone. You want me to show you? I went beyond the earth wall. Yeah, I wouldn't even use their terms. I went beyond the ice shelves to see this land. I set foot on it. I took pictures of it. There's definitely a continent down there called Antarctica. Of course, my 11th book is called The Secrets of Antarctica, The Untold History of the Ice Continent. And I actually have to even bring it up in my first chapter called The Author's Karma Statement to say, look, I went down there. There's no such thing as flat Earth. It's just, I believe it's a psyops to get the truthers in this field or the conspiracy researchers like us, Mike, to fight amongst themselves over something nonsensical. But we can go over all the reasons why this is not a flat Earth.
So you're saying you didn't see any assassin penguins down there trying to keep you from escaping and into that whole other universe that is on the other side of the ice wall?
Yeah, there is no such thing as an
Oh my
ice
God,
wall.
it's some of these I'm very open-minded about everything, as most of us who are researchers are, but some of these people seem to have forgotten the art of discernment. It's like they created a cult out of this fantasy land, and who would have ever thought it would have run as wild as it has? Um, when I was doing some research on this, the Flat Earth Society actually began in 1956, I believe, and that time period automatically gives me a red flag. It's like anything created after the CIA was formed, like 1947, I believe. It's like, wow, what's the motivation behind this? How did it just kind of emerge from nowhere, considering it's been basically agreed upon through all the sciences that the Greeks figured this out like 2000 years ago or something ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
Something BC. I forget the exact
over
date.
2,000 years
Yeah,
ago.
over 2000. Yeah, and all these claims that they throw at us, it just really it's like spaghetti being thrown at the wall to see what sticks, and in all honesty, nothing does stick. At least
No, it
nothing I've heard
doesn't.
so far.
It doesn't at all. And there you have the whole idea that you just have to believe that it is kind of like believing in the Old Testament. You
It's
have
a
to have
cult.
faith, Mike,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
necessarily evidence. And there have been flat Earth people that went down to Antarctica to prove that it's flat Earth and came back and had to say, well, okay, actually we changed our mind. It is around Earth. But the Greeks, I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to say Herodotus, the father of history, but I think it was someone else, another Greek scientist, who proved the Earth was round by putting a pole in the ground and then measuring the distance. It was in the Nile River Valley, and he walked the distance. I think it was about 100 miles from pole to pole. Another one up near the delta of the Nile, and he was able to discern that at 12 noon, when the shadow basically went away on the summer solstice, because the sun was directly over it, you'd go down those 100 miles and there was a discernible shadow. And so by just measuring the amount of shadow on the other pole, he was able to determine the actual spherical nature of the planet. It's actually quite a brilliant move by people that didn't have computers and didn't have Wikipedia or anything else to base their knowledge on, but just to do experiments out in the field.
Using mathematics of all things,
Yeah,
and logic and discernment.
in
It
the
is.
scientific method. And it's a provable way. You can still do that technique today to determine the shadow length between a north and south uh, destination and be able to see that same kind of differential in the shadow length.
So one of the claims that I hear most often is that anything NASA says is obviously fake because it's alleged that the word NASA is the Hebrew word for deception, which alone is
Never a
not,
straight answer.
which is not true because the verb is actually pronounced nasha,
Uh,
and the closest thing in Hebrew is nase, which means to try. So I don't know how that one continues to stick, but it is true that we have been lied to about pretty much everything, and science is definitely no exception, especially in medicine and other forms of deception out there. What is your take on NASA? And by the way, NASA's not the only space agency out there that has uh, claimed that the Earth is round. You know, there's space agencies in India and China and European Union and Russia. They pretty much all agree about the shape
yeah.
of the Earth anyway. So what,
Well, yeah, NASA does do things to protect their narrative, but I do think they went to the moon. I actually met Buzz Aldrin once at a travel conference and questioned him about orbs following the capsule back on the return from the moon, and he just shot me this glance, these steely blue eyes, and he didn't confirm or deny it. But I think the look he gave me was, "How did you know that? And why'd you ask me?" But people will put out a Bible to Buzz Aldrin and say, "Will you swear on the Bible that you step foot on the moon?" And he's been seen punching people out. There's some videos of him doing that. So
wow,
don't mess with Buzz. He's got a quite a right hook. But so I do think they went to the moon, and I also think that they mistakenly put out some Stanley Kubrick uh, studio versions of the moon landing because keep in mind in 1968 he was in the studio in Britain and they built a huge studio set of the moon that was going to be in the film 2001 A Space Odyssey. And so all those pictures you see of the module and lights coming down and the guys hanging by strings and stuff, I think NASA just did a bonehead move. They got Kubrick to shoot this for them in case something went wrong, because you're in the height of the Cold War. It would be egg all over their face if something went wrong. So they wanted a hedge, but they made the bad move of issuing those photos of the moon. But always the moon is round, right? Always when we look at planets through a telescope, they're round. So why would Earth be flat?
makes sense to me. Um, Getting to the moon landing stuff, it's always been my belief that yes, there has been deception, but it's been more on the part of how they set up the secret space programs much earlier on, and the moon landing in 1969, whether it was real or not, was to give the public the perception that that was the first time we'd ever been to space and we'd been to the moon and all that kind of stuff. Seems like a lot of people who have come out who have been part of these programs, it's kind of a overarching theme to this is the whole deception is not the shape of the earth, but the timeline involved in space travel
Hmm.
and what's actually going on in the black budget projects and that kind of stuff. Um, so do you believe that 1969 moon landing was real, or do you believe that the whole thing was fabricated in order to present it to the public that that was the first time? Or do you think we've been doing it all along and then that was just another mission?
So Yuri Gagarin, the Soviet cosmonaut, he was the first man in space to orbit the planet Earth, clearly showing the rounded nature. Then the Mercury missions put our own astronauts into space. They too saw the curvature of the Earth. it was the Apollo missions that went to the moon. But the first Apollo missions just went around the moon. They didn't attempt a landing until Apollo 11, when they did put down their capsule that was planted in the Sea of Tranquility. And just recently, the Indian Space Agency put up a probe around the moon, and they took a picture of the Sea of Tranquility, and there is that pod that's still there. So yeah, I do think they went there, and there's evidence that they did. But there's a lot of weird things about the moon too. But going there, and then there were several other Apollo missions that also followed. I think it was 12 men in total walked on the moon. So there would have been six other missions that went there, including Edgar Mitchell, who was a very outspoken astronaut and started the out by you in Petaluma. Was it the noetic sciences? And he was all about open disclosure, and he had alien experiences too, as well as the Apollo 11 astronauts that saw them on the crater of the moon, according to William Tompkins. They were there watching the Apollo 11 astronauts just as they were watching these ships come down. And so the telltale sign was we weren't quite ready to be there. The warning was return and don't come back. And so after the final Apollo 16 mission, apparently we never did go back. However, there are Apollo 17, 18, and 19, maybe even 20 and more, that did go back that were secret missions that landed on the dark side of the moon. And interestingly enough, I have this in my new book, Secrets of Antarctica. On the dark side of the moon, there is a base in the shape of a swastika. And so, if history was truly to be told correctly, the Germans were the first to the moon, decades before the Apollo 11 astronauts. So there's three ways to look at it, because some people say, oh, well, you can't even get past the Van Allen belt. It'll just fry your machinery. Everybody will die of radiation. You cannot get out of near Earth orbit. That's one perspective. Another perspective is mine that yes, we did go to the moon, but yes, there are faked photos and videos. And then the third perspective, which is also my own, is that humans have been traveling all across this solar system for the last couple decades. And this is the secret space program with Solar Warden, and the Germans had the Nachtwaffen secret space program based out of Antarctica, and maybe still to this day. And there are other nations, as you pointed out, that have their own space agencies, that have their own secret space program as well. But there are laws on the books that were not meant to weaponize space. So no space weapons, even though they have the rods of God, but they're not actually weapons per se. Those rods of God, they just drop a titanium pillar out of near Earth orbit, and with so much acceleration from gravity, when it strikes the ground, it's as big as a nuclear explosion. And that actually happened in Tianjin, China, about 10, 15 years ago. It was right around the time that China allowed their currency to greatly devalue to keep pace with America. And it caught the bankers off guard. They didn't like that. And so they dropped a rod of God on Tianjin, China. If you remember that huge explosion, this is just outside of Beijing.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it is amazing.
So
An
the Death
amazing
Star is
force.
real.
And there's no radioactivity, there's no residue from a bomb either, because it's just gravity pulling that rod of God down, and then when it hits, it leaves a crater bigger than a nuclear explosion.
You just touched on another subject that flat earthers bring up, and that is that gravity does not exist.
Huh.
And I have a
No.
hard time wrapping my head around that, how they could even think in those terms. I mean, isn't it obvious? gravity exists. Sure, we don't really know what it is. We don't know where it emulates from whatever, forces lurk beneath the veil. But I think everybody could agree that if you drop something, it falls towards the center of the earth. They claim that it's density, not actual gravity. Do you have
Hmm.
any explanation for why anybody would come up with such a thing?
Well, it's a way to just find another, what they would say, loophole as to why we're living on a flat Earth, that gravity is not what you think. So basically, to smear egg in the face of all the real conspiracy researchers that are doing good work and getting to the bottom of things, well, now they got to start defending gravity. Just have to start defending a spherical Earth, and it just I don't even do these interviews anymore. I did a 3 hour interview with Flat Earth Dave, this guy. He's like a real popular one. And
I saw
towards
that.
the
That
end
was,
of it, he's just repeating his same talking points. I'm like, dude, you did, not only did you not convince me, but he put up a bounty. I think it was a $5,000 bounty. Prove me wrong. And all our talking points, many of them I brought up, but he didn't pay me the 5K.
well, they basically claim it's all fraudulent. It's like anything that you kind of present to them, it's like, oh, that's not real. That's just, they're saying that that's the psy-op. So, but yet they don't offer any empirical evidence. And the only reason I was interested in doing a show about this is because there's such an audience for this and they're so condescending. It's
Yeah,
like that's what gets me about it. It's like, I'm about, hey, let's have the discussion, right? That's what we do
right.
is like people who like to research and try to seek the truth. It's like, let's have a discussion. Let's weigh out the why this might be true and why it might not be true. But they're not like that, are they?
No, and they fell for the psyop, psychological operation run by the CIA, covering up the fact that there is a shadow government or a deep state that
Yeah,
are covering
exactly.
up the fact that they're running a secret space program and dumbing down critical logical thinking. And it divides the truth movement.
And it
So
has done a good job at that, hasn't it?
it's done a real good job at that. And so Wano Savin and Gene Decode, two people I follow in the alternative media from time to time, they both had some information on it. And they both said that if you can't make sense of a story, follow the money. And
Yes.
following the money in terms of who put out these really slick flat earth videos 15 years ago, they said it was DARPA. And DARPA is defense uh, operations. They're the ones doing these killer robots now, and a bunch of other nefarious stuff. Um, and CIA's got their fingers in DARPA as well. But I also found it really interesting that Juan Osavan, he also said, and you continue following the money, and it actually comes from the Vatican, who's putting this out there as well. And there you have the reason why they use words like the firmament and even a flat earth, which is a central tenet of the Old Testament, that they kind of get their props from getting people to believe this malarkey about a flat earth. And then again, they're dividing the truth movement. They're getting us to argue over something nonsensical.
It's also, I think the firmament and all that is discussed in like the Indian traditions as well. But I've always taken that to mean the firmament. Firmament means like the atmosphere. It's like it's that strip of gaseous air and oxygen and all that that separates us from the vacuum of space. So I guess it's a matter of interpretation that they kind of ran away with and created
Hmm.
this little cult behind. Um, another claim, which I think is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard, is that there are no flights between New Zealand and Chile.
because there's hardly anybody living down there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like economics 101, right? But
Yeah.
if you actually do look up plane schedules, there are flights between Auckland, New Zealand and Santiago, Chile, and they don't go all the way over the Arctic Circle to get there. As a world traveler, have you ever personally done flights
Yeah.
totally within this southern hemisphere?
So the only time I ever saw Greenland flying over it was a flight from Frankfurt, Germany to San Francisco. And the route goes way up to the Arctic Circle and then comes down, which makes perfect sense if you look at a globe. It's the shorter distance to go up and over the top that way. And again, I saw it, my own eyes. There's Greenland, there's the ice cap. It was a beautiful, clear day. But according to flat earthers, you would have to go straight across. So you would then fly over the mid-Atlantic, and then you'd fly over New York and follow the continent that way, and never even fly into Canada on that route, Frankfurt to San Francisco. But sure enough, went over Greenland. Most of the flight was over Canada, and then we just popped down into the U.S. around Montana, making our way down to the West Coast. So that was another proof. And we can go through the proofs here. I know we kind of short on time here. Maybe we
There's
should
there's
go
too many
through.
to go over, but what would you say is your top most smoking gun proofs that the flat earth is not indeed
Yeah,
visible?
well, we I mentioned that ancient cultures who use the flat Earth cosmology knew information, of course, with the Greeks measuring the Earth. Um, but even medieval Europeans generally thought the Earth was flat. This myth was created in the 17th century by Protestants to argue against Catholic teachings. So again, here you have the Catholic Church that might have its fingers in all this. Despite the scientific facts and obvious effects of Earth's sphericity, pseudoscientific flat Earth conspiracy theories persist. Since the 2010s, belief in a flat Earth has increased, but membership of modern flat Earth society, and I love that meme, Mike, that says the Flat Earth Society has members around the world.
It
And
is
of
that
course,
is
it's
pretty cool.
it's the rise of social media that has brought all this about. And look, we have reason to believe that we've been lied to by our government. Very good reason to believe. But that doesn't mean we got to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some things that are verifiable and have been for centuries. In the case of Columbus was the first guy to say, hey, it's not a flat earth. I'm going to sail my Nina Pinta and Santa Maria due west and find a new land. But did you know that Columbus, until his dying day, thought that all his voyages to the New World were to the islands off of India? And that's why they're called the West Indies in the Caribbean. That's why our Native American are called Indians, because Columbus was so stubborn, he couldn't fathom that he had discovered this whole other continent. But to your point about what are the best pieces of evidence, well, really, what we can observe. Sunrise can be witnessed twice if you change elevation quickly in your same location. And I've done that on a sand dune. You're watching the sand dune on the shores of Lake Michigan. Right when it hits the bottom, you run up the sand dune and you can catch a second sunset. That's a proof right there. And then you cannot zoom back in on it. The sun remains the same size from observable dawn until observable dusk. You have a moonrise, you have a moon set. That's very round. Accurate eclipses down to the second for Earth and other planets and their moons orbiting the sun. So every other planet, every other sun, every observable heavenly body up there is round. There's nothing flat ever. And this, of course, can be seen in the solar eclipses. actual imagery of the moon blocking the sun. A lunar eclipse shadows are always perfectly curved. I've seen several full solar eclipses and many other lunar eclipses, and never do you see a flat bar going through. It's always a round sphere that comes through. Of course, the stars are circling the south celestial pole, and that's observable in the same direction to everyone south of the equator. And also, what I observed when I was in the southern hemisphere several times when I was in Indonesia, in the southern hemisphere, or Australia, and of course in South America and Antarctica, all the stars are completely different down there. So up here we have the Big Dipper, that the bowl of the Big Dipper points to the North Star. You don't have that in the South, and that was really confusing to the mariners of the age of exploration because their main constellation is called the Southern Cross, and it is very visible down there, and all the stars are completely different, including even we've heard a lot about Zeta Reticuli and the little grays. You can see Zeta Reticuli in the southern hemisphere, cannot see it in the northern hemisphere. So how could that be unless it was a spherical Earth and you're just on one bottom side looking at the stars all around, and then you go up to the top, see the stars all around you that way too.
Indeed. Well, it's always fun to read the comments when somebody posts a video like this. It really creates this polarization like pretty much no other topic does. Because, and I don't know why that is. I don't get why this people are so attached to this. The way I see it, we wake up every morning and, it's the same slavery system that has been going on for thousands of years, whether the earth is flat or the earth is round. So why this becomes the top topic for somebody's attention span is beyond me. Yeah, I get the psy-op aspect of it, but what I don't get is the fish that take the bait.
Yeah.
That's what totally amazes me about all this. But
Well, a lot of fish took the bait with this thing.
that's
So
true.
I guess humans are just kind of gullible.
And that gets into the dumbing down of the educational system and the million other things that are in your books and how they all tie together. And the flat earth is like just one symptom of this much larger weird thing that's gone on through the centuries that we're,
Yeah.
we're facing now in the early 21st century, where you have the right amount of sophistication and lack of education. And it's like all these weird belief systems just pop up in the void.
Mm.
But well, anyway, we're getting down to the wire here. Would you like to just talk a little bit about your upcoming book? We have about 4 minutes left.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's so much more we could go on with the flat Earth. Uh, Also, look at how Galileo was persecuted for saying that the Earth rotated around the sun. And he had a telescope there when he was on trial during the Inquisition. And he said, just look for yourself. It's pointed right out there, sun and the planets. Take a look for yourself. They refused to look. And again, here's the church and their doctrine, and they refused to budge. And it took many centuries before they issued an apology to Galileo, who was then put under house arrest. Fortunately, he wasn't executed because some of them were. I think Copernicus or another early astronomer was put to death during the Inquisition. So this is a dangerous topic to talk about. But these are observable phenomenon using the scientific method that can be replicated. Looking at the shadow that Saturn projects, for example, onto its rings and how these progress through the observable season. All the planets and all other solar systems that can be seen under a telescope follow an elliptic plane. It's just basic science here. So it's really, why do people fall for psyops should be the nature of this question here. But what am I up to? Yeah, I'm working on this new book. It's actually done. We're just laying it out and putting it together and sending it around for some endorsements and book reviews before it's publication time. Everything is long out, months ahead of time when you come out with a new book and you have a distributor like we do. Independent Publishers Group, a great organization I've been with for 30 years. I wouldn't be in publishing this long if it wasn't for my relationship with Independent Publishers Group. So it's been really great. And I'm launching that at the end of the year. I'm going to a whole bunch of conferences to speak still this year. And then next year, I'm going to Europe 3 times. I'll be in the UK actually in December. It won't be next year yet. And then I'm going to Germany in May, and then the Bosnian Pyramid Conference in June. So
How cool
not
is
a
that?
easy trip. That'll be in Bosnia
Wow.
with
That's
Dr. Sam. Yeah, he invited
definitely
me
one
to.
that's been on my list is to go to Bosnia and see
Me
that.
too. I
So,
haven't been to any of those countries of the former Yugoslavia, the Balkans, the
yes, I have not been to the
Balkanization
Balkans.
when they break it up.
Nice, nice. So, well, I'd love to have you back once your book is out. I guess that means your book is actually completed. It's just a matter of going through the logistics and the business aspects to get it ready for distribution, right?
That's right. That's
So all
right.
the
So
content has already been figured out and
all
laid
done.
down and all that good
Edited,
stuff.
images, captions, everything. And so have people go to cccpublishing.com. That's all my books and all the other authors that I publish. Or people can go to bradolsen.com and check out my conference schedule coming up. I'm leaving to Sedona tomorrow, and I'll be in Vegas with Brett Luter, who is on episode number 1. And then he and I are
Nice.
also going to Star Knowledge, and maybe we're going to take you with us.
Well, we got just a few seconds left, so thank you so much for sharing your perspective on the flat Earth, and hopefully more people will listen to this kind of reasoning and join our side of things.
You bet.
All
Thanks,
right.
Mike.
Thank you.